A man is standing at the rail of a ship in the middle of the Atlantic in the dark. He's crossing to reach his wife in Europe. The captain has just come to find him, to tell him, quietly, that they're passing over the place. That somewhere beneath the hull, in water this man would later describe as 3 miles deep, his 4 daughters went down. Annie, Maggie, Bessie, Tanetta. 12, 7, 5, and 2. Lost at sea less than 2 weeks before. His wife is the only one of the 5 who set out who came back. And somewhere on this crossing, over this water, he writes a few lines that more than 150 years later your church will still put on a screen. The lines the volunteer at the back loads into ProPresenter without thinking twice. When peace like a river attendeth my way, when sorrows like sea billows roar, it is well with my soul. We sing it at funerals. We sing it when we have run out of other things to say. And most of us have no idea what it cost the man who wrote it, or, and this is the part that I actually want to get to, what it had already formed in him, long before he ever needed it. That is what I want to sit with, not the tragedy. We'll get to the tragedy, and we're not going to rush there. But the tragedy is not the point. The point is what the song was doing in him years before the worst night of his life, and what it might be doing in you, right now, on an ordinary Tuesday, with your in-ears in and nothing wrong yet. Before he was the man at the rail, Horatio Spafford was, by almost any measure, a man things were going well for. He was born in 1828 in Troy, New York. He came up to Chicago and became a lawyer, a senior partner in a large firm. He was good at it. He invested in real estate north of the city, the kind of investment a man makes when he is confident the future is going to keep being kind to him. He married a woman named Anna. She was from Stavanger in Norway. She had come into his life as a student in his Sunday school class, and he was 14 years older than her. And the way the accounts tell it, he waited. He arranged for her schooling and he waited until it was appropriate, and then they married. By the early 1870s, they had 4 daughters and a comfortable home in a suburb on the north side, and they filled that home with people. That last part matters more than it sounds. The Spaffords were not just successful. They were the kind of believers who put their house at the center of the work. Horatio had been active in the movement to end slavery. Their home was a gathering place for reformers. Francis Willard came through. Dwight Moody, the most famous evangelist in America at the time, the man who led a revival across 2 continents, was a personal friend. Spafford supported him. When you read about the Spafford cottage, you get the picture of a household that was porous on purpose. People came in, people got fed, people got help. I want you to sit with that man for a second before anything happens to him, because here is what we tend to do with a story like this. We tend to skip the setup so we can get to the part that makes us cry. But the setup is the part that does the forming. The faith that would hold on the deck of that ship was not assembled on the deck of that ship. It was built in a comfortable house, in ordinary years, in 1,000 small, unremarkable acts of a man who had decided, long before the bottom fell out, what his life was going to be aimed at. And then the bottom started to fall out. In October of 1871, Chicago burned. The Great Chicago Fire is one of those events that became a postcard, a thing you half remember from a history class. But it was a real fire in a real city, and it took most of the city with it. And it took most of what Spafford owned. That real estate he had bought north of the city in the spring of that same year, the confident investment, the fire reached it and reduced it to nothing. So before any of the grief that this story is famous for, there's a quieter loss that usually gets one sentence. A man watched his financial security burn. The future he had been building, the margin, the cushion, the proof that he had done life correctly, gone in a matter of days. And here's the first thing I notice. I'm not going to make more of it than the record allows. In the aftermath of the fire, the Spaffords kept doing the thing they had been doing. They kept the house open. They kept helping. When you lose the cushion, you find out fast what is actually load-bearing in your life. And in his case, the answer seems to have been the same thing it had been before the fire. That's not a small detail. That is formation showing its work. The fire did not create his character. The fire revealed it. 2 years later, in 1873, the family planned a trip to Europe. Part of it was for Anna's health. Part of it was that Moody was going to be preaching in England, and the Spaffords wanted to be there for it. They were going to make a real season of it, all of them. At the last minute, Horatio could not go. The accounts say it was business, zoning problems that came out of the fire, the unglamorous work of a man trying to build what he had lost. So the plan changed the way plans change. He'd stay back, finish the work, and follow in a few days. Anna and the 4 girls would go ahead. They boarded a steamship called the Ville du Havre, one of the grand ones. Anne and Annie and Maggie and Bessie and Tanetta going on ahead to Paris with their father planning to catch up. On the night of November 21st into the early hours of the 22nd, somewhere in the middle of the Atlantic, an iron sailing ship called the Loch Earn struck the Ville du Havre. The ship went down in about 12 minutes. I want us to slow all the way down here, because 12 minutes is the kind of number you can read right past, and it deserves better than that. 12 minutes is not enough time. It's not enough time to understand what is happening. It's not enough time to find 4 children on a sinking ship in the dark. 226 people died in those 12 minutes. Anna was pulled out of the water unconscious, found on a piece of the wreckage. The 4 girls were not found at all. The survivors were eventually brought to Cardiff in Wales, 9 days after the ship went down, and from Cardiff, Anna sent her husband a telegram. You've probably heard the 2 words. There were more than 2, and the fuller version is somehow worse, because you can feel her doing the impossible math of a telegram, where every word costs money, trying to say the unsayable in the fewest words she can. But it began with the 2 words everyone remembers: saved alone. That is what came across the wire to Chicago. Saved alone. What shall I do? And Horatio got on a ship to go to her. This is the part the legend has polished until it's smooth. So let me give you the version we can actually stand on, because the real one doesn't need any help. We know he made the crossing. We know that somewhere over the Atlantic, the captain of a ship called him up to the cabin and told him they were passing over the place where the Ville du Havre had gone down. The captain knew. He knew whose daughters were down there. And we know what Spafford did with that, because he wrote it down himself in a letter to his wife's half-sister, Rachel. He wrote, and I'm reading his own words here, on Thursday, last we passed over the spot where she went down in mid-ocean, the waters 3 miles deep. But I do not think of our dear ones there. They are safe, folded, the dear lambs. The waters 3 miles deep. That is his phrase. He stood over the deepest grave a person could imagine, the literal place. And what came out of him was not, they are down there. It was, they are not down there. They are safe. They are folded, the dear lambs. The hymn came out of that crossing. Now, I want to be careful, because this is where tellings start to embellish. Some accounts have him writing every word at the rail in the moment. The manuscript that survives has its own small puzzles about dating, and scholars are not in perfect agreement about the exact hour and place the lines were composed. So I'm not going to tell you I know he wrote it standing at that spot with the spray on his face. What I can tell you on his own testimony is that he crossed over the grave of his children, and his settled response was peace. Not the absence of grief, peace underneath the grief. And the song is the shape that peace took. When peace like a river attendeth my way, when sorrows like sea billows roar. Whatever my lot, thou hast taught me to say, it is well with my soul. I want you to catch one word in that verse, because it's the whole thing. Thou hast taught me to say. Taught. Past tense. He's not claiming he generated this peace in the moment by being a strong enough Christian. He's saying he was taught to say it. Something was put in him over years that was already there when the telegram came. The saying did not start on the ship. The saying started a long time before, and the ship is just where we found out it was real. And listen to where those words even come from, because this is the part the scholar in me cannot leave alone. Peace like a river is not a nice image Spafford reached for. It's Isaiah chapter 66, the Lord saying, I will extend peace to her like a river. Sorrows like sea billows echoes Psalm 42, the deep calling to deep. All the waves and breakers gone over a person's head. He's not writing greeting card lines on the worst week of his life. He's doing what the church has already done in the dark. He's praying the scriptures back to God. The hymn is teaching you the Bible while you think you are only singing it. And the title itself, the line everyone knows, is borrowed. It is well is not a phrase Spafford invented. It comes from an old story in 2 Kings. A woman from Shunem had just lost her son. The boy is dead in the next room, and when the prophet's servant asks her how things are, she says 3 words, it is well. She says it over her dead child. Spafford, a man who knew his Bible the way you know your own kitchen, reached back across the centuries for a grieving mother's words and put them in his own mouth over his own lost children. The most comforting line in the hymnal is borrowed from one of the most devastating moments in the Old Testament. That's not denial. That's a man standing inside the whole counsel of Scripture and finding that it holds. That's the center of this whole thing, so I'm going to say it plainly, and then we'll keep moving. The peace that held on that crossing was not summoned that week. It was formed over a lifetime, and then it was withdrawn from like an account that had been quietly filling for years. A few years later, the words found their music. A man named Philip Bliss, one of the great gospel songwriters of that era, wrote the tune. He named it after the ship, Ville du Havre. If you open most hymnals today and find "It Is Well," that is the tune name printed in small type at the top of the page, the name of the ship that took the daughters. And here's a piece most people never hear. The year Bliss wrote that tune, 1876, he and his wife Lucy were on a train in Ohio, the Pacific Express, in a snowstorm, when a bridge over the Ashtabula River gave way. The cars went down into the gorge. Around 90 people died. Bliss, by the accounts that survived, may have gotten free and went back for Lucy. Neither of them was ever recovered. So the hymn we are talking about has 2 graves under it, not one. The words come from a man standing over the water where his children drowned, and the tune comes from a man who would die with his wife the same year he wrote it. I don't point that out for the drama of it. I point it out because I think it's honest about the thing this song actually is. We have turned "It Is Well" into a comfort blanket, a soft song for soft moments. It's not that. It was written and set to music by men who were standing in the exact kind of dark the song refuses to lie about. When you sing it, you're not singing over the trouble. You're singing from inside it. And that's a different thing. And the people who made this song knew the difference. And here is what we lose by trimming the song down to the first verse and the chorus. The weight is in the verses we skip. My sin, not in part but the whole, is nailed to his cross, and I bear it no more. And that's not comfort in general, that is the cross. The peace in this song is not that everything is going to be fine. It's that the worst thing about him, his sin, has already been dealt with. So the worst thing that can happen to him, the loss of his children, cannot finally undo him. And the verse he ends on does not even stay at the grave. The trump shall resound and the Lord shall descend. The song is the cross behind him and the resurrection in front of him, and a man standing between the two saying "It is well." Take those verses out and you're left with a feeling that fades by Tuesday. Leave them in and you have the whole gospel in 4 stanzas. Now, most versions of the story stop right about here. They stop at the hymn, because the hymn is where it resolves. Man loses everything, man writes "It is well," roll credits, dab your eyes, and I understand why. That's a clean shape, and we like clean shapes, but that's not where Horatio Spafford's life stopped. And if I leave it there, I'm doing the same thing to him that we do to the song. I'm sanding off the parts that are hard to sing. So let me keep going into the chapters that the devotional version usually skips. After the sinking, the Spaffords had more children, 3 of them. And on February 11th, 1880, their son Horatio, who was 4 years old, died of scarlet fever. The man who wrote "It Is Well with My Soul," after losing 4 daughters at sea, then buried a son on dry land 7 years later. The famous hymn did not buy him an exemption. The grief was not a one-time tuition payment, it came back. And something in him changed after that. The record is honest about it, so I'll be too. His theology shifted. He moved away from the church he had been part of. The Spaffords left their Presbyterian congregation and they began holding their own prayer meetings in their home. The American press, who found the whole thing strange, gave the little group a name. They called them the Overcomers. It was not a compliment. There's a popular version of this part of the story that says the church turned on the Spaffords, that they were told their suffering was God's punishment and that this is why they left. You will hear that told as fact, and I want to be careful because the documentation for that specific claim is thin, and I'm not going to put words in the mouths of people who can't answer back. What the record does support is quieter, and in some ways more relatable. A man went through more loss than most of us will ever carry. His understanding of God moved in ways his community could not follow, and he ended up outside the walls he had been inside his whole life. However it happened, by the end of the 1870s, the elder and his family were on the margins of the church that had been their home, and then, in 1881, they left the country. In August of 1881, Horatio and Anna Spafford and a small group of 13 adults and 3 children sailed for Jerusalem and started over. They founded what became known as the American Colony. The idea, at least the part everyone can agree on, was to live a simple, shared, devoted life in the city at the center of their faith, and to serve the people there. And by many accounts, they did serve. The colony, later joined by a group of Swedish Christians, did real and lasting good in Jerusalem. They helped Muslims, Jews, and Christians without sorting them first. Decades later, through the First World War, the colony ran soup kitchens and hospitals and orphanages, while genocide and famine moved through that region. That's a real legacy, and it deserves to be named. And I have to hold an "and" here, because the honest version requires it. The colony is complicated. Some of the accounts of life inside it are hard. There are reports that members, married and single, were required to take vows of celibacy. There are reports that children were separated from their parents, and that children worked in the colony's various businesses. These are contested, and the people involved are long gone. I'm not in a position to render a verdict on a community I only know through documents, but I am also not going to hand you the clean version that pretends the man who wrote it as well floated off into uncomplicated sainthood. He did not. He led a movement that was, depending on who you ask and which year you look at, both deeply self-giving and troublingly controlling. Horatio Spafford died in Jerusalem in 1888 of malaria. He was 59. He's buried there, a long way from Chicago, a long way from the water that took his daughters. So that's the fuller shape of it. Not a man who suffered once, said the perfect thing, and was at peace forever. A man who suffered and wrote something true, and then kept suffering, and kept reaching, and ended up somewhere none of us would have predicted from the first chapter. The hymn is real, and the rest of his life is real too. Both things are allowed to be true. So here's the question I've been circling this whole time, and I think it is the only question that actually matters for the people that are watching this. What did the song form? Because the easy reading of this story, the one I'm asking you not to settle for, is that the backstory makes the song hit harder. You learn about the 4 daughters, and the next time it as well comes up in a set, you feel it more. And that's fine as far as it goes, but that's just the tragedy doing emotional work on you. That's not formation. That's a feeling, and feelings burn off by Tuesday. The deeper reading is this. Spafford could write it as well over the deepest water in the world because of who he had already become before he got there. Thou hast taught me to say, the peace was not produced by the crisis. The peace was revealed by the crisis. It had been forming for years in the comfortable house, in the open door, in the ordinary unremarkable obedience of a man who had decided what his life was for long before his life was tested. And that has a direct word for you. If you are the person who leads worship in a room, because every Sunday you're putting songs into people, you are putting them into people on their easy weeks. The young couple in the 3rd row, nothing wrong in their life yet, singing it as well on autopilot while you run the set from behind a snare mic. The volunteer at the back who pushed that lyric to the screen, the person you cannot see in their car later who caught 2 lines of it on the drive home. None of them need the song today. Today's fine, but you're not forming them for today. You're forming them for a day that has not come yet. You're putting words into their mouth on the easy week so that the words are already there on the week the telegram comes. And it will come for every person in that room. Some version of it's coming. And on that day, they're not going to compose something new. They're going to reach for what was already in them. They're going to say the thing they were taught to say. That's the whole job. That's what we're doing when we lead. We're not running a music slot. We're teaching people on the weeks they do not need it. The sentences they will need to say on the weeks they cannot think. I said earlier this is true for the whole team, and I meant it. The person who built the lyric slides, who timed the fade, who made sure the words came up clean and in time, they're not doing tech support for the worship. They are part of the forming. When that song lands on someone 3 years from now in a hospital parking lot, the clarity of those words in that person's memory was shaped in part by someone they never met at a console on an ordinary Tuesday, paying attention. The texts are forming the room too. They always have been. And I want to say something to you specifically, the one leading, because I know how this actually goes. Some of you are going to lead it as well, or a song just like it this weekend, and your own heart is going to be heavy when you do it. Something is wrong in your life right now, and you are going to stand up there and put peace into other people's mouths while you're still looking for it yourself. I'm not going to tell you that this is a problem. I think that might be the most honest worship there is. Spafford did not write that hymn from the far side of grief, all healed up. He wrote it from inside the crossing, with the water still under him. You leading from inside your own hard season is not a disqualification. It might be the realest thing you do all year. You come in with the well dry, and you give what you do not feel like you have. And somewhere in the giving, it gets put in you too. Go back with me to the rail one more time. A man in the dark, over water 3 miles deep, where his 4 daughters are, and the words that come up out of him are not, they are lost. They are safe, folded, the dear lambs. He did not manufacture that on the deck. It was put in him over a whole life, and it was there when he needed it. That is what worship does when we do it right, slowly, quietly, on the ordinary weeks. It puts something in people that will still be there when the water goes deep. So this weekend, when you stand up there, whatever you're carrying, remember what you're actually doing. You're not filling time before the message. You're teaching a room full of people the words they will need on a day you will never see. Thou hast taught me to say, teach them. It's the most important thing you will do all week. The Lord be with you in the room, and I'll see you on the next one.